Chair McCann,
Here.
Vice Chair Cosgrove,
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Camp.
Here.
Commissioner Crandall,
Here.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
and Commissioner Prescott Leffler. And for the City Council, I have Mayor James,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan, Councilmember Ferguson. Here. Councilmember Noblock,
Here.
Councilmember Ward. Present.
Cecilia. Here.
Oh, gosh, how I missed you. Sorry. Commissioner McCacken.
Thank you. We have one item on the study session today, the Master Project 22-089 at 654 Camino de los Mares, SC Senior Housing and Medical Office. Do we have a staff presentation?
Good evening, Jennifer Savage, Assistant to the City Manager. We do have a staff presentation this evening. I first want to thank both the council and the commission for doing a joint study session tonight and being flexible with our limited laptops and microphones. There is some flexibility in both of those if you want to make sure that when you're commenting or asking a question, you can move those a little bit. I'll go ahead and wait for the staff presentation to come up. Thank you. And so this evening, we are doing a study session on the project at 654 Camino de los Mares, proposed senior housing and medical office. There are no decisions being made this evening. Next slide, please. And I'll go over a little bit of what's in the packet, as well as next steps. First, a little bit of background. There was a settlement agreement in regards to this property. In the past, it was used as a hospital and zoned as regional medical facilities. And through the litigation process, there was a settlement agreement that the city would revert the property back to the previous zoning. And that is part of your part of the proposal this evening. The site was considered in the housing element, and the housing element considered the site both for housing and a portion of it for medical use. The project has been reviewed by the Design Review Subcommittee, or DRSC, for 3 times. And last week they did move to push the project towards the Planning Commission meeting. Next slide, please. Some project summary items. They are proposing to demolish the existing building and surface parking. They're proposing to construct 2 buildings of senior housing with 250 units. They include amenities among that property and the buildings, including a pool, outdoor living space, and courtyards with vegetation. And they are proposing Spanish colonial revival architecture. We mentioned that they were before the DRSC 3 times, and they've been working with that body to refine their architecture to provide a really good design for the city. The other part of the project is medical office, and that would be approximately 750 square feet. Next slide, please. Part of the project includes transportation and parking modifications. So they are reducing the number of driveway entrances that are out there now. Currently there's 3, and then they would be reduced to 2. In doing so, they are also reconfiguring the turning movements. One of the driveways, the non-signalized driveway, would be limited to a right in, right out only. And the traffic median on Camino de los Mares would be modified to help direct traffic in that manner. The project proposes shared parking, and that's specifically for a portion of the guest spaces that are required for the senior housing. So not all of the parking for the senior housing and medical office would be shared, just a portion of the guest spaces. They are also providing some bicycle parking to help with transportation options. Next slide, please. The applications that the project entails includes a master project, and that's just one project number to capture all of the actions that would be part of this project. The actual application titles would include general plan amendment, zoning amendment, CUP, site plan, architectural permit, tentative parcel map, and they're also proposing a development agreement. Next slide, please. The regulations that the project is guided by include the general plan, the design guidelines, specifically the city design guidelines. There is an additional document that's referred to as the Henry Lenny design guidelines, but this particular location isn't required to comply with those. The project is also, of course, subject to our municipal code, specifically on the senior housing project section. That will be a key part of the municipal code that the project would be reviewed against. There's an additional law from the state level, the density bonus law, that this project would also be subject to, or rather is using. And that's really an important thing to stop on for just a moment. There are some limitations that the city, any city, has with the state density bonus law. There are some lanes or limitations to what we can and cannot approve. And this project does intend to utilize the density bonus. So when that comes up, we can have a further discussion, but there are some limitations on what we can and cannot approve in relation to state law. Next slide, please. The project does include environmental review. Because it was considered as part of the housing element, they are tiering off the EIR, or environmental impact report, that was prepared for the housing element updates. We are preparing an addendum to tier off that. There are background and technical reports that are considered as part of that addendum. They include, but are not limited to, cultural, noise, water quality, and vehicle miles traveled. Just to note, the applicant is preparing and providing a traffic impact analysis, but changes to CEQA mean that the traffic impact analysis is not part of CEQA. It's still part of our project consideration, but not part of CEQA. And then also, in addition to that, the applicant will be providing, or has provided rather, a parking analysis. And that's an error in the staff report, or the memo, that I'd like to correct. The memo says that they will provide it, but they have provided it. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps? Well, you do have some part of the application in your packet tonight. You have the narrative, and then you also have the architectural portion of the plans. In the future, when it comes before the Planning Commission for a public hearing and the City Council for a public hearing, you will receive a number of technical background reports, the environmental addendum, and the full set of plans that will include grading and drainage. And then this evening, we also have an applicant presentation. Staff concludes our presentation now and will be available for any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Would the developer like to make a presentation?
Council members, planning commissioners, city staff, guests. I'm Tom Leary. I'm a senior vice president with Memorial Care, and I want to thank each of you for allowing us to present this evening. And I want to thank everybody else who showed up tonight and braved the heat. We're very much looking forward to your feedback and to your comments on this project. I'm going to be very brief because we have a complete team here of all of our design experts. They'll be much more informed on the technical aspects of this project than I will be. We have a lot of information to impart tonight, and we want to make sure that we allow plenty of time for questions and answers and still get us home before midnight. But on behalf of Memorial Care, I want to let you know how pleased we are to be here this evening. And mostly what I want to do is acknowledge and express our appreciation for the leadership that the City Council has shown and for the efforts of the city staff. We got here today because everyone involved recommitted to the goal of putting together a project that would best serve the interests and the needs of this community. That's been our guiding principle. That's been our North Star since we began. Everybody bought into it, even going back to the discussions with Mayor Bain. And we're extremely appreciative of the effort that's gone into this, the leadership that's been shown. And we strongly believe that this project is consistent with that goal. So without further delay, I'm going to introduce Dr. Mark Schaefer, the Chief Executive Officer of our Medical Foundation, who's going to kick this off.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to the planning commissioners and city council members for having us here tonight. I recently had the opportunity to meet with some seniors at the Dorothy Visser Senior Center. And what really struck me was how concerned many of them were with their ability to stay in San Clemente, mainly due to the cost of housing here. And so this is a real problem, and our project goes quite a long ways to helping 250 seniors remain in San Clemente. We do have some slides. Can we put those slides up? Thank you. We go to the next slide. So just a few comments about Memorial Care. We are a nonprofit healthcare system. We serve Orange County and Southern LA County, over 1.5 million patients. We have 4 hospitals and over 200 healthcare centers. And we've been ranked as leaders in California and the US for healthcare. Next slide. And one of the really growing realities that we have is our aging population. We have over 600,000 seniors in Orange County, and it will double in the next 20 years. And San Clemente actually has an older median age than most other cities in Orange County. So the significant housing shortage is particularly acute here. Also, as a physician, I just want to point out that there is a connection between stable, comfortable, and affordable housing and longevity and wellness in seniors. And we see that every day. Next slide. One of the other realities for our seniors is the cost of living here. And so because of inflation, particularly the cost of housing, prescription drugs, many seniors are concerned and at risk of outliving their retirement savings. And we're seeing that happen. And what they're doing because of that, they're moving. They're moving to Arizona, they're moving to Nevada, to Texas and other states. And what we need is a local solution to keep our San Clemente seniors here with their family and friends. We can go to the next slide. So that solution is really, our senior housing is a really important part of that solution. Not only does it provide housing for our seniors, but it also creates move-up opportunities for younger growing families. And as pointed out, it aligns with the city's housing element as well as with the state and RENA goals. Next slide. And so the solution that we're proposing, as you've heard, is to develop a new senior community and health center. It would be on the former San Clemente Hospital site, 6.6 acres. We would develop 250 senior apartments for rent for 55 and older seniors. And a portion of those would be for low income residents, approximately 5% or 13 units. We would also develop a Memorial Care Health Center on that site. Next slide. That health center would be approximately 7,500 square feet, and it would be open to the public, not just to the seniors living in the apartments, but to all the residents of San Clemente. And we will have primary care physicians, specialty physicians, as well as urgent care open 7 days a week. Next slide. And you might wonder who would live in those apartments. And so we actually did a little bit of research and have come up with 2 different tenant profiles that I'd like to go over briefly. The first one is a San Clemente resident, a female in their 60s, recently widowed, who lives in a large home and is looking to downsize, and also wants to stay in the community and be in a walkable environment, be able to walk to healthcare, walk to restaurants and shopping, and be in San Clemente with their family. Next slide. The other profile that is likely to live in these apartments is an older couple in their 70s who are on a fixed income. They live here in San Clemente, but they're worried about outliving their retirement savings. And so they need to sell their home to live on that money. And affordable housing is really their only option to stay in San Clemente. So these are not hypothetical scenarios that we made up. These are scenarios that we see every day when we take care of thousands of residents in San Clemente. And we believe that this project will go a long ways to keeping our seniors in San Clemente. So now I'd like to turn it over to Kevin Bukta to start the architectural talk. Thank you.
I think we have a presentation, a very brief presentation as well. Commissioners, council members, staff, thank you very much. My name is Kevin Bukta. I'm with TCA. I represent the architects on the project. We could get the presentation up. There we go. Perfect. Next slide. So as Jennifer pointed out, we've done this project in a Spanish colonial style, keeping consistent with the architecture in San Clemente. What this slide shows is how compatible it is with the adjacent, some of the adjacent buildings along Camino de las Maras. To the north and south of us, there are 3, 4, and 5-story buildings that are similar in height to what we are proposing on our site. Next slide. This is a view looking north on Camino de las Maras at the 2-story MOB and then the 3-story massing along our street edge. Next slide. This is a view looking south towards our project, and you still see most of our 3-story massing is along Camino de las Maras, with the 4-story massing set back quite a ways and then primarily along the freeway edge. Next slide. This is a building plan. We have 2 buildings. The courtyards are prevalent in building 2, and those courtyards have views out to the ocean. There's a pool courtyard there on the left building. We've also tried to maintain view corridors through our building between the adjacent retail parcel to the north and then the adjacent senior housing project to the south, as well as our paseo that bifurcates both our buildings. Next slide. This is just a shot of the entry to the paseo off Camino de las Maras. Our building's set back quite a ways from Camino de las Maras. We have an extra 10 feet set back there with additional landscape between our building and the sidewalk. There's also a seating entry. The entry plaza to our paseo provides seating, and it's a public space there. Next slide. This is a shot of the entry. That's the 4-story portion that's set back from Camino de las Maras, approximately about 120 feet. We have a portico share for guests to pull up to and enter in. Next slide. This is another shot looking down the side, one of our view corridors out to the ocean. Next slide. And then a few more of our money shots, if you will. This is our pool courtyard looking out to the ocean. It's a raised courtyard, so it does afford views over the freeway to the ocean. And then a few more shots looking back towards the fitness center and club room, and then our entry plaza into the paseo. Next slide. This is an image of the medical office building, 2-story massing there, 7,500 square foot. And that is my time. Thank you very much.
Does the applicant have more they want us to present? Oh, hang on just a sec.
If you would,
Do we have a time restriction on the applicant's presentation?
We do have a base 10.
Given the complexity of this project, I think it would be appropriate to afford them more time. Would that be the general consensus?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm hearing yes, so.
I want to hear from city attorney on that.
The body has the ability to do that as fact finder. So I think if there's something specific that you'd like to discover, then you can ask the applicant to do that. And so maybe asking them what they have left and what realm you might explore more deeply, then you could ask them to come and talk about that. So
What he said.
yeah, so if you could describe, gentlemen, what's left to talk
Sure, I
about,
think
then we could decide if we.
the remaining slides are talk about the height, the average height of our buildings, and show the 3- and 4-story massing.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I suggest to think about that because that becomes important fact finding. to the waivers and concessions that Ms. Savage discussed earlier. So on that basis, you can ask for more information from the applicant.
Okay, my impression, unless there's a strong preference now that we afford the applicant more time, please focus on those height issues and the exceptions that you guys are asking for relative to the code.
Ted for exceptions.
Mr. Chair, I would ask that we define time on that. Not have it.
Okay, is 10 additional minutes maximum appropriate? Is it,
More
that-
than plenty.
is that
more than
enough?
plenty, Yeah.
okay, so staff, if you could please give them a maximum of 10 more minutes and please try and cram your information to that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide. So this is a elevation of our project. As you can see, the 3-story massing primarily along Camino de los Maros there. The side shot that you see, the side elevation there, shows how our building steps down, similar to the project to the south of us. It gets a majority of the 4-story massing along the freeway edge. The average height of our building taken from the roofs is about 45 feet, with some of the roofs being down at 35 feet and some of the roofs being up at about 47 to 48 feet. Next slide. This is a shot from the freeway edge, looking back at the project. Again, primarily a majority of the 4-story is along this edge, step down towards the freeway. The bottom image is the north elevation of our project, adjacent to the retail section, and you can see the portico share and drive-up entrance there. Next slide. This shows the average height, and it's hard to see from here, but the average height is showing across there as the 3-story goes down to the 4-story edge of about 45 to 48 feet. Next slide. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'm simply gonna thank the council, thank the planning commissioners again for your time this evening and the consideration. You know, we've had the opportunity to do a lot of community outreach. We've met with a number of groups within the community. We've received an awful lot of favorable feedback on this. We've got something close to 70 or 80 support letters that I understand have been submitted to the council or to the staff. So those are on record as well. So with that, I thank you, and we look forward to getting your feedback as well as the feedback from the many that have chosen to attend tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to note that this is not a public hearing and the definition of what a public hearing is, but we do welcome public comment. So if you'd like to speak, you'll have a 3-minute time limit that will be strictly enforced. Please fill out a speaker card if you haven't already. Jennifer will invite and give the names of who's coming up, who's next. And please proceed.
Thank you. So the first 3 speakers are David Abernathy, Ken Kasna Nelson. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing that. And Victoria Hernandez. So David Abernathy. Thank you.
Members of the council, members of the planning commission, thank you for preparing this time for us to discuss this project. And I had planned to make some comments, but I have changed my mind on this, and I will defer to the next speaker.
Good evening, council members, planning commission members. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is Dr. Ken Kasna Nelson. I'm a local doctor here in San Clemente. For the record, I was raised here. I went to Ole Hansen Elementary School and graduated from San Clemente High School, class of '83. I see and care for San Clemente patients every day, and I've been doing so for 20 years. Much of my practice consists of geriatric and senior patients. So I became quite excited about the San Clemente Senior Living and Healthcare Center project when I heard about it. For me, it's abundantly clear that housing affects healthcare, full stop. There's no doubt a key driver of positive health outcomes is access to good, stable, safe, and affordable housing. This is especially true for our seniors. I support the San Clemente Senior Living and Health Center because it will provide just this kind of critical housing. As mentioned, there will be 250 senior apartments, houses in perfect location. It will be within walking distance to shops, restaurants, and doctors' offices. Furthermore, it will be next door to the San Clemente Villas Assisted Living Community, which will also be of great benefit. I truly believe this is the kind of smart project that will benefit our local seniors and help achieve their optimal health. At this time, I would like to enter into the record a letter signed by 17 other doctors and colleagues of mine supporting this project, which I believe has already been submitted. I graciously urge you to support this project when it comes before you for a decision. Again, thank you very much, my fellow San Clementians. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next speaker. Jennifer, if you could say their names before, just so it's on the record.
Thank you. Victoria Hernandez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members, and planning commissioners. My name is Victoria Hernandez, and I'm representing the San Clemente Chamber of Commerce and in support of the Memorial Care Senior Housing and Healthcare Project. And as stated, the project includes 250 senior homes addressing our local housing shortage while creating options for residents over the age of 55 to continue to live close to their families and friends in San Clemente. The chamber is very pleased to see the expansion of Memorial Care's medical services in the city with a combined urgent care and healthcare center provided on this project site, which is open to all San Clemente residents. This means residents will be able to access physicians, specialty care services, and wellness experts in a one-stop location. In addition, Memorial Care has committed to a design that is sensitive to the community and fits with the architectural character here. Further, the design elements proposed are sensitive to preserve the views for nearby residents as well as mitigate traffic. With new residents comes new customers for local businesses, including restaurants, retail stores, and medical offices. Further, job opportunities will be generated during construction as well as permanent healthcare positions at the health center. Memorial Care's proposal delivers on the San Clemente Chamber of Commerce mission to enhance our city's economic development and improve our quality of life. The chamber strongly recommends your support of the Memorial Care Senior Housing and Healthcare Project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next three speakers are Marie Siegel, Warren Vidrine, Donna Vidrine. Marie Siegel.
Good afternoon. I've been in San Clemente about 40 years. We don't have a lot to say. I just think everyone knows we need senior living for our seniors here. Been here a long time. I was one past president's Chamber of Commerce. I started Laura's House, founded that, found a groups of women to go to the military and support their families and men that didn't come back. So I've always been to that, and I've lived here many years. I lost my husband last year, and I have a nice house, and I'm not without money, but I mean, I know a lot of people who live here and are older seniors, and they live here and they worry about where they're going to live. And I think that's a big concern of ours. And I just thought I should let you know that. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Warren Vidrine.
Good afternoon, council members, commission. This has to do with zoning. There's more than 80% public support for a hospital with an ER That's a very strong mandate from your constituents. A clear majority of those surveyed supported a bond issue, and a small minority expressed opposition. That surprised me. With a $300 million price tag and very fuzzy details, I personally would have had trouble supporting this bond. With a good business case, and especially with participation from our beach cities, a 2/3 vote should be quite achievable. We must get beyond the flood of self-serving memorial care propaganda. They don't want competition. We want a hospital. Let's do this. I think the slick YouTube video released by the council was probably sincere, but it contained false information. Important aspects had already been debunked by the Save the Hospital group, so the video is compromised by debunked facts. Why weren't the prominent physicians in that group consulted? How did that video come out of nowhere like it did? Okay, going forward though, there's a strong mandate for a hospital with an ER, and I believe an excellent business case can be made for it. For 6 years, I've been asking for a buildable address to be tagged as a hospital site. Hand waving aside, there's still no such thing. The Los Mares site must not be rezoned or abandoned unless and until at least one buildable site with address is officially designated and zoned for hospital use by the city council. That is the mandate your constituents have given you. You're a lame duck council. Any attempt to rush things through or proceed without deliberation and transparency is going to hang around your neck like an albatross from this day forward. So if you want, senior housing, which we do need, get this going, get a hospital going, make sure that we have a designated spot zoned for a hospital. Thank you.
Thank you.
Donna Vidrine.
Good evening. I'm Donna Vidrine, and long before I ever considered running for city council, I was focused on the need to preserve access to hospital services in San Clemente. As a nurse, I understand something about the impact of losing access to healthcare and hospital resources. We've watched for years since Memorial Care closed our hospital in San Clemente and began working the political angles to allow them to transform the property into a mixed-use profit center that may meet their needs but doesn't begin to compensate for what we are losing. The citizens of San Clemente have made their voices heard. 8 out of 10 indicated they want a hospital and would be willing to invest resources to ensure we get one. We had a hospital with an emergency room. Now we don't. If you approve this project, you will be serving Memorial Care's interests, but will you be serving the best interest of our community? According to the results of the survey this city council commissioned and conducted, the answer is clearly no. Let's not forget that Memorial Care sued San Clemente, forcing us to spend precious dollars that could have been used in much better ways. Are we going to allow them to be rewarded for that? In what way have we settled our differences as required by the court? What they propose cannot compensate for the loss of a hospital. Must the cities of San Clemente, Dana Point, and San Juan Capistrano continue relying on the overburdened hospitals in Mission Viejo or Laguna Beach for our emergency medical needs? When time is lost in transport can be the difference between life and death, this ceases to be just another planning decision. If this project is approved without alternative land identified and a special hospital district created that might include the cities of San Clemente, Dana Point, and San Juan Capistrano, our leaders will have rolled over and broken faith with our community. If you want to send the message to every developer that if you sue us, flash pretty pictures, and just wait us out, we'll eventually cave in, then siding with Memorial Care over the people of San Clemente is the perfect way to do it. My hope is you will choose a different course and focus on the interest of preserving a hospital in San Clemente with Memorial Care's support and partnership. If they aren't willing to partner with us, why would we surrender to them? The proposed height exceeds the roof limitation of 45 feet. The proposed height is up to 59 feet, 7 inches. This proposal would require a change in zoning to commercial designation from the current regional medical facility zoning district and general plan designation in which it currently sits. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next three speakers are Grace Todd, Paulette Masacarino, and Jill Takahashi. Grace Todd.
Hello, Planning Commission and City Council members. Thank you for taking the time to hear me out. My name is Grace Todd, and I've lived in San Clemente for 21 years. My husband and I raised our 3 kids here at Forester Highlands, and since our first child was 1 year old, they're now 21, 18, and 16. I live off of Camino de los Mars, and I drive by the location of this project every day. And this area has been an eyesore for many years when I think it could be serving the community. And this project is what the area needs at this time. Our residents need additional options for healthcare services close to home. Having health and urgent care services available is additional peace of mind for us with families. And I think many of my friends and neighbors would agree. By building homes for the 55 and older population, we'll be filling a need for our city and our local residents. When we moved here, our neighborhood was full of all young families with young children, including us. And now all of our children are grown and the local population is aging. I just turned 50, my husband's 53. So we think about the future and where we retire in the next several years, and we hope we can stay in our beautiful community. The project, I think, will beautify the area with its Spanish style architecture that complements the character of our Spanish village by the sea. And I think seniors who just want to stay active and remain in town will be able to stay near their families. So I would urge you to support this project for the benefit of our seniors and the healthcare needs of our community.
Thank you.
Paulette Mascarino.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council and Planning Commissioners. My name is Paulette Mascarino. I'm with South Orange County Economic Coalition, also known as SOSEC. SOSEC is the voice of businesses in South Orange County, and we are proud to support Memorial Care's proposal for a senior housing community with 250 housing units as well as a health center. This project will help local seniors age gracefully in the community they call home and will help to address the overall housing shortage affecting all San Clemente families. Memorial Care has been thoughtful in their approach to repurpose the 6.6 acres into addressing both the health and housing needs of San Clemente residents while making sure to propose a design aesthetic that blends with the architecture of the city with minimal impact to traffic. Again, SOSEC is proud to support this project as we have long advocated for housing projects that promote a strong economic climate for our growing region. This combined residential community and health center will benefit the local economy and advance South Orange County as a continuing leader for job growth and economic opportunity. We recognize that more housing is needed to ensure that South Orange County continues to grow in a strategic and beneficial manner and a healthy jobs to housing relationship. This proposal delivers on SOSEC's mission of building a strong local business climate, both regionally and within our local communities, while at the same time generating new revenue for the city of San Clemente,
which will fund programs and services that benefit all residents and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill Takahashi.
Hi, my name is Jill Takahashi. My mother loves her beach community and she loves that she gets to walk everywhere. Her goal is to not get in the car as seldomly as she can. She loves her friends and her activities. And we have a housing shortage across the board in Orange County. And we have a growing population of our baby boomers. And they need our attention and our support from from all of us. And I think it's important that it comes from our healthcare settings as well, because that is what she's worried about too, having that convenient, knowing that that's accessible. So to have a property that's beautiful and can support her specific needs and continue her lifestyle that she loves in her community, I think it's a gift to her and the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next three speakers are Liberato Martinez, Michael Turner, and Jennifer Bullard. Liberato Martinez.
Hi, my name is Liberato Martinez, and I'm here to let you know that I do support Memorial Care's senior community housing for senior housing. My father just turned 80, and there is such a shortage that as much as I'd like to have my father with me, my father needs a place that he can call home. And with such a shortage, this would provide an opportunity for him to call home, and many seniors to call home. The shortage is so severe that this is becoming more and more common. And even more so, a facility like this, where there's a medical center there, he can easily see his doctors, his primary care, and help keep him healthy, as it would help keep other seniors healthy as well. And then just the lifestyle that's here in San Clemente, he'd be able to continue to walk and be out and about and be active because we live in such a great place. So I think this is also very typical of our seniors, where my father's aging and like many other seniors, outliving his retirement. So having a place like this, like the senior community in the apartments by Memorial Care, would be very helpful to his situation and as well as to the other seniors in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Turner.
Good evening. My name is Michael Turner. I'm a San Clemente resident. Matter of fact, I live right around the corner from the proposed site. There is a growing need for housing for our aging population. It's an acute problem in San Clemente and throughout the Orange County. And yes, the proposed project does meet the city requirements for low income housing, with 5% of the units set aside for seniors and low incomes. And I believe that the proposed health center will play a key role in meeting the San Clemente evolving healthcare needs into the future. Also, with the location of the project, with the local stores and restaurants, that the residents will be able to get their needs for what they need for everyday life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Bullard.
Hi, good evening. Chair McCann, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council and Planning Commission and community. My name is Jennifer Bullard. I'm the Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Government Affairs for the Orange County Business Council, or OCBC, and I'm pleased to have your time tonight to express our support for this project as well. OCBC represents some of the largest employers here in Orange County, and one of our top priorities is advancing smart and innovative housing solutions for residents across Orange County. We know that there's a housing shortage in Orange County. Our chief economist has done quite a bit of research in this area, and based on our population and jobs here in Orange County, we're about 60,000 units short of where we should be. And that's only projected to, get worse over time. And we also know that we have an aging population in Orange County. And so that is even more exacerbated at the senior housing level. The business community talks a lot about the aging population with respect to how we're going to plan for our future workforce, because we have so many of those retirements coming and people aging out of the workforce. Our county is working on figuring out how we can maintain that talent pipeline to keep those workers here and to keep our talent here in Orange County for those jobs. And so part and parcel to that is housing. One of the reasons the Business Council cares so much about advancing housing projects is because employers are really struggling with keeping and attracting new workers because of that lack of housing options, anywhere from entry level to the C-suite. So we really do need all types of housing, which is why, by offering a project such as this, that is designed for your senior population and not only benefits your senior residents, but also frees up housing and other housing types for those professionals and young families. And again, it goes to our quality of life goals as well, which the Business Council is mutually working on. Housing is a determinant of health in the community and for people individually. And so it's great to see Memorial Care bringing forward this, benefiting the community, but also combining an innovative way to bring healthcare services and 250 units of senior housing. So we, look forward to supporting this as you consider it in your future meetings and really see it as a win-win opportunity for the community. And OCBC is happy to be a resource on the research we've done in housing and the economic impacts, quality of life impacts. So feel free to have staff or any of you to reach out. We're happy to provide that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next three speakers are Heather Gilbert, Martina, Larry Culbertson. Heather Gilbert.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the City Council and Planning Commission for allowing comments regarding the proposal for the old San Clemente Hospital site. I'm here in support, actually. I've been a San Clemente resident for about 17 years now, and I live on Avenida de la Australia down between Bonita Park and the industrial area. And what I can honestly say is the current hospital site location does look pretty bad. With the revitalization of North Beach, the highway improvements that we've just finished and the new ones that are probably coming, improvements that are coming through Parks and Rec, everything that's happening at the outlets, I really don't see why this project shouldn't be next. And I was really excited, and I'll get to that in a moment, to see that it's going to be a combination of healthcare space and senior living. And the reason I'm really excited about this is my first few days in San Clemente, when I moved here, this town is unlike any other place I've lived. And I've lived East Coast, Midwest, kind of all over. And I can say when you walk up and down the streets of San Clemente, it's different. People say hello to you. The shop owners get to know you. Folks know my dog. Anytime I've got visitors or guests in town, they're treated just like they belong here and should have always been here. This kind of thing just doesn't happen. I call it my Mayberry because it reminds me of what we used to see on TV. And that's what really San Clemente is all about. The community, the caring are palpable. And with that said, my husband's already retired and I'm about 10 years out. We already know we can't stay in San Clemente. We don't want the burden of maintaining a structure and a property. We've been looking for affordable housing that we can start to gear up and get ready to move into. We haven't found anything in San Clemente. We've actually been searching out of state. I can't tell you how thrilled I was to hear about this project and to think that I get to stay here, or I've got the opportunity to stay here. When I hear about Dr. Schaefer and some of the others mentioning, I hope I got that name right. When I hear about health being linked to housing security, it's very, very true. I can tell you just in the planning stages for retirement, it's already a stressor in our household and our family. We don't want to go. we want to stay right here. This is pretty amazing. And I was really excited to hear about some of the medical and healthcare options that are coming. Another urgent care really would benefit. There's not one in that particular location of the city. Having access close to the seniors is amazing. I've been a nurse over 30 years, and I can tell you healthcare is important. It is critically important to seniors, and to have it accessible. Sometimes just getting to and from and getting to the services that you need can really make a difference. So I thank you.
Thank you.
Martina.
So good evening, council and commissioners. We can discuss if San Clemente wants a hospital all day long. We can also discuss if San Clemente needs a hospital. But having said that, wanting and needing a hospital are two different things. And even if both these things are true, there are simply no providers that have expressed interest in its operation. So how did we get here? There's been at least 2 operators that have floundered at that location. Did they fail the city, or did the city fail them? When Memorial Care expressed interest in running a standalone hospital without an emergency room, the city rezoned in an attempt to force them into operation, and Memorial Care called the bluff and closed their doors. We've now had an empty building for over 5 years that would cost millions and millions to bring up the code, and the city would still have no providers to operate it. If the need is for an emergency room, then why hasn't the city been fighting the state requirement that prohibits a standalone emergency room without a hospital? The fact is that Memorial Care owns this land. This proposal could help towards satisfying the state mandated housing element, including some units, approximately 12, that would be earmarked for lower income renters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Culbertson.
Good evening, Larry Culbertson, resident. I didn't prepare a fancy spiel because I didn't see a public comment on the agenda. I thought it was just a study session, but I do have a few thoughts. I did attend 2 of the 3 design review committee meetings, and I wish everyone who spoke tonight had done so. It's my understanding that what we're really here about is the design of the building. I think that's what Planning Commission primarily looks at. And I've heard of a lot of emotion come out here tonight, and it is an emotional issue. We do need more senior housing, but the trouble is what's being proposed is just too big. It's outside of what the zoning permits. Zoning in that area is 3 stories. They want to go 4. Density. I don't have the numbers at my fingertip. They want to go far denser than what is allowed. The height, 45 limit in that area. They want to go 60. There's no reason we have to do this. They don't need 250 units to make money. Look at Riot's Paradise. Look at some of the other senior housing that's already been approved in town. You could do this. They could spread that out a little bit more. It doesn't have to be that tall, but it's just too big, and we need to look at other options. Encourage more housing like this at a lower density spread around town. I also brought to the attention of the design review team that the staff report says that the massing and scale along that part of De Los Mares is in keeping with what's proposed. It's simply not true. They just showed one of their diagrams that showed a couple of the buildings that are up there at 4 stories, and one of them I think is at 5, but predominantly it's 2-story along there. So this is not in scale with that part of Avenida De Los Mares. So please don't approve anything this big. You'll be setting a precedent that we'll be sorry for in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our final 2 speakers are Jimmy Joe and John Kunk. Jimmy Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Council Member, and Planning Commission. Thank you, Honorable members, for joining us and giving us this chance to speak. I operate a business here, and I actually have 3 team members that live in San Clemente, and 2 are seniors actually. So this is a near and dear thing. And matter of fact, one of our clients had to actually move from San Clemente and move to Santa Ana. She lives in one of those MacArthur places, those nice ones. And she goes, this is not the beach. She could see the beach, but this is not San Clemente. And she would have loved to have lived here, but it really did not meet her needs. She needs medical. She needed to have an urgent care or at least a doctor's office nearby. So she moved. Does she regret it? Kinda. She was back home. She moved. So one of the things I'm asking you is, please approve this. Please help. Yeah, I get the zoning. I get that. I do. But we're talking about trying to help, as you heard from so many wonderful speakers today. They didn't come out emotional. They came out and said, we're doubling our seniors population, and our senior populations are our citizens that live right here in San Clemente that want to stay here. Yeah, they're going to sell their house, and yeah, they want to be able to live out the rest of their life. They're retiring at 65, 60, and so forth. They want to be able to continue to stay here and be a part of this community. They have actually a lot of them, and have family members that live right here, and they want to continue living that experience here as well. So thank you. I appreciate you cleaning up that 6 years closure. It's been deteriorating. And I know you guys have been trying to make a hospital happen and emergency care happen. And I know that all the effort was put in. This is not a last gut wrenching decision that says, oh, let's just do something. That's not it. You guys have thought it through. There is emotion, but you guys paired that emotion and thought it through, and is offering us a really good solution here, and helping the community and helping our seniors by putting a wonderful product out there that supports our citizens here. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And John Conk.
Good evening. My name is John Conk. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I'm a San Clemente resident. I live in Sea Point Estates on Campanilla. And I'm in favor of the development of this project in general. However, I do completely agree with the recommendations of the Design Review Committee. I think the project's too tall. I think exceeding the city's 45-foot height limit is not necessary. Exceeding the 3 stories is not necessary. If you were to allow Memorial Care to exceed those limits, I think they should conduct a story pole analysis that the residents who live above the project can see and understand the impacts to their potential views. The real estate values of the homes on that street are entirely based upon their views of the ocean, and this has a potential to block some of those views. So I don't agree with the height of the proposed project, but I do like the project and want it to go forward with the 45-foot height limit. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the city's process for CEQA approval of this project. I think it's flawed, and I think you need to go back and relook at it, because I think you're setting yourself up for CEQA litigation challenges. The city did a programmatic EIR for the housing element update last year. In that document, this project was not a part of that analysis. At the beginning, when it was prepared, there was a notice of preparation sent out. There was a scoping meeting held. It was not a part of any of that. It wasn't discussed. It wasn't a part of those documents. It was public review of the environmental impact report. It wasn't a part of that document. Look at the exhibits, look at all the language, look at the technical studies. This site was not part of that document. It was slipped in at the last second, right before it was certified, but it was not analyzed in the project. You can't do that. That's not how programmatic EIR works. And programmatic EIR has to identify the projects that it's analyzing, and it needs to analyze them. It wasn't analyzed. So you need to go back and look at that. It's just not appropriate to tear off of a document where a project was slipped in at the last second without any public review or any analysis. Look at the traffic report that's part of the technical appendices of that document. It's not analyzed. Look at the aesthetic section. It's not analyzed. It's not analyzed anywhere. The word Mares, the name of the street that it's located on, isn't even found anywhere in that EIR except the name of the street. So the project's not in there. It was slipped in. I'm not sure how that happened, but everyone who lives in that area didn't have an opportunity to review the document because they didn't think a project was going to be developed in that area. So my big concerns are the height, number of stories, and the CEQA document, and approving CEQA for the project. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to give public comment this evening who has not yet spoken? Thank you. Seeing none, we'd all like to thank you for coming out, and you're certainly welcome to stay, please do. But for sharing your comments and your thoughts with us is important and valuable. So with that, I'll close the public comment period and open it up to council and commission discussions. I think primarily focused on questions related to fact finding about the project. Councilwoman Ferguson.
Thank you, Chairman. On the subject of the last speaker, Mr. Conk, could you possibly, Cecilia, touch upon that regarding the secret document and why this property was not analyzed with the rest?
I'm going to have Jennifer Savage provide you with the details regarding the EIR and the inclusion of this project. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So first, I want to give a brief overview of a programmatic EIR versus a project-specific EIR. The programmatic EIR looks at the whole of the potential rezone sites that we were considering in the housing element. Those sites are spread across the city, and so they look at the impacts across the city. That programmatic EIR looked at a number of housing units with multiple sites that we then started to reduce based on feedback from the Planning Commission, the council, and the public. That big picture number is what was analyzed in the technical background reports, such as the traffic analysis. And after the draft EIR was published during the public comment review period, the property owner for this site that's before you this evening offered through a letter the fact that they would be interested in the site being a housing opportunity site. It was then added to the potential sites for rezoning in the housing element, and our environmental consultant prepared some additional analysis for that site, largely adding it to the programmatic EIR, the larger document that considered the total number of housing units across the city.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Jennifer. And did the city attorney weigh in on that?
Yeah, so our environmental documents do go through our attorney's office.
Okay, just wanted to touch on that because I was very concerned at the speaker, Mr. Conk, mentioning that could possibly expose us to litigation because of not a thorough analysis on this. So
thank you.
City attorney, were you the one who reviewed that?
Yes, our
Okay.
CEQA team was in close touch with staff on that because it had such broad ramifications in the larger context that Jennifer mentioned.
Okay, you feel comfortable with the document?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Camp?
I have a question for you, Jennifer. The parking study that we received, what was that based on? Is that other senior housing projects?
Yeah, and so the applicant team is available to speak. I can't remember the document that they use, but there is a specific guide for parking studies, specifically shared parking, and it provides ratios for assumptions when calculating whether shared parking is appropriate and when the balance of parking is used for each particular use. So that parking study will use that professional manual and show the calculations based on the time of day and the number of units and the square footage of the medical office use.
Okay, but that's one of the items that they're requesting an exception on based on zoning.
That's correct. And so our zoning code allows them to request shared parking. They do have to provide that parking study. And what the parking study would show is that at the peak use of parking, so at the time of day, the day of the week where the parking is the highest, they still have enough parking spaces on site to provide both for the residents, the guests of the residents, and the medical office.
Okay, but that's not in our packet, right?
No, it's not before you this evening. They are working on making sure that it is refined to staff's approval level, and that would be provided to you at your public hearing.
Okay,
The other thing that you mentioned is they didn't do a traffic impact analysis, but they plan to.
Yeah, let me just clarify that. So the traffic impact analysis is not required to be part of CEQA or the environmental review. It is required for our project review. They have submitted a draft. Staff is reviewing that draft to make sure it's sufficient and covers all the requirements before making it the final draft and providing it to the Planning Commission.
Okay, so is it normal to consider density without seeing a traffic study?
It is normal to discuss the project as a whole. It is, you would not make any decision without that traffic study.
Okay. So you mentioned that there's a few exceptions that they're requesting. The zoning, it seems to be, is that there's a zone change requirement for this, right? To a CC4, is that what it is?
They are requesting to change it to CC4. It's not a requirement. It's part of the settlement agreement to go back to the previous zoning. So if we just look at the zoning, that's part of the settlement agreement we have with the property owner. Once that rezone is considered, that zone allows for the request for senior housing.
Okay, so it's integral.
Correct.
To what they're trying to do. Okay. So the CC4 zone has specific requirements, I guess limitations, I should say, for FAR, number of stories, height, amount of parking required, all three of those, right?
They do, yes.
Okay. So how does their project stack up in terms of FAR, for instance?
Thank you. That's a great question. So there's the base zoning development standards or limitations, if you will, for CC4. Then we look at the senior housing projects development standards, and those are different and greater than those that are in the CC4 zoning development standards. So that's two pieces. And then the third piece is the density bonus law. There is a part 2B, if you will, where there, if you look at the senior housing project development standards, there's an opportunity, a mechanism, if you will, in our code that allows the applicant to request an increase of floor area ratio. So through the code, the applicant can request an increase of floor area ratio. Part 3, the density bonus. The applicant has the opportunity to request concessions, incentives, and/or waivers. And it's through that process that the applicant is requesting exceptions from the number of stories that are in the development standards.
Okay, but I asked you about the FAR.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the floor area ratio is a limitation in the base zone of CC4. And it is not identified specifically as a development standard in the senior housing project development standards until you get to the section that talks about the opportunity to ask for an exception for an increase of floor area. So this is through our code. I'm sorry, I don't have a diagram. So CC4 base zoning allows 0.5 FAR. CC4 base zoning also allows, with a conditional use permit, a request for senior housing. Senior housing states that floor area ratio should match that of the base zoning, except that per the section for an increase in floor area ratio, the applicant can request to go up to 2.0 FAR. The applicant does plan to present justification for the decision makers to be able to approve the FAR that they are proposing, and it is under the 2.0 FAR that the code provides a mechanism to make that request.
Okay, so 0.5 is what the zoning allows. That gives them about, what, 141,000 square feet, something like that.
I don't have that number in front
It's
of me.
on the plan.
I trust you. Thank you.
And they're requesting, I think it's roughly 260,000 square feet,
Around 200,000. Yeah.
260,000, I believe.
Does the applicant want to confirm the total square footage? I believe it's 192 for the 2 residential buildings plus the 7,500 for the medical office. So that's just under 200,000.
Okay, so it's significantly higher. I'd like, that wasn't in our packet, but I know there's a project summary. So I'd like to be able to view that if possible. You can pull that up.
I don't have that available to pull up. Are you referring to the project summary that is in the DRSC packet?
Yeah,
Okay.
submittal.
Okay, so that is available online, and those were some initial analysis done by staff based on the base zoning and the senior housing project development standards.
Okay, I think that's pretty important information to share with us.
Thank you. That will be included with your packet for the Planning Commission public hearing.
Okay, so just if you can explain the number of stories, it's the zoning, again, it allows for 3 stories maximum. And they're requesting 4 stories. That's another exception that they're asking for, in addition to the FAR and the parking. Correct?
Correct. They are asking for 3 and 4 stories, so partial 4 stories through the density bonus law.
Okay. What percentage of the project is 4-story versus 3? And is there any 2-story or 1-story?
Yeah. So if you take a look at what's in your packet in the development plans, if you take a look at the elevations, the applicant has been working closely with DRSC to modify those elevations. And the residential portion has 1, 2, 3, and 4-story elements.
Do they have a percentage?
There is not a percentage that's presented in your packet this evening. It's roughly half or less than half. One way to think about it is if you look at sheet. Pardon me, bear with me. I believe it's the last one. So sheet L1, the last page in your packet. If you look at the port cochere, it's identified by a red circle with the number 1 and an arrow. If you look down past that, the cream colored building, that's about where the 4-story elevation starts. And so if you move across towards the right, it's roughly there, but I say roughly, it's better to look at the elevations to really see where that 4-story is.
Okay, I could be wrong, but I think in our DRSC meetings, we discovered it was about 60% of the buildings overall are 4-story. So it's a significant number. Do you have an idea if that's the case?
We don't have a percentage before you this evening, and the applicant is continuing to work on the elevations. So the ultimate percentage that comes before the Planning Commission and Council might be slightly different.
How many units are on the 4th floor?
And we know how many units
Is it
are on the 4th floor.
40 some odd units that are on the 4th floor or what?
May I refer to the applicant? Do you have the number of units that are on the 4th floor?
Are you referring to the portion that's the downhill portion?
Any 4-story.
Any
anything that's
4-story
building up
element? So on building 1, there's about 18 on the top portion. And then on building 2, in that courtyard that steps down, there's approximately the same amount of units there. So I would say about 36 to 38.
On the 4th floor. Okay.
Yeah.
36 to 38 units.
Yeah, that 4th floor that goes down, it's about 18 units there.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't mean to monopolize the questions here, but I got a couple more.
We're here to get your questions answered and we might have the same questions, so
Okay.
keep going.
Okay. This is kind of a different track, but does Memorial Care plan to own and manage the housing element of this project?
Can I refer to the applicant to answer that, please?
We haven't made any final decisions on that in terms of how we're going to structure it. What we are committed to is because we've got the medical office building right next door, we're going to be neighbors. So I do expect that we will have some kind of continuing interest, but obviously we're not in the business of owning or operating residential communities. So I expect that we'll have somebody in that is an expert at that. But we haven't made any final decisions yet as to how we're going to handle that.
So this is your first?
This is our
Is this your first
first what?
residential?
Yeah,
development?
we did, this is, it actually is a somewhat novel concept that's gotten coverage because more and more health systems are looking at these types of developments for the very reasons that we've laid out. So this would be a first for Memorial Care, but not necessarily a first anywhere.
Mr. Camp, I have a kind of a follow-up question to your question. May I?
Yes, absolutely.
So what's going to dictate and when do you think that will occur when there will be some sort of handoff or transfer of ownership to an operator of this facility?
Mayor, we haven't set a timetable for that either. We've been so focused on getting to this point and then moving forward from here. I think once we get a final on the project, we will sit down and evaluate how we want to go about identifying a partner that would work to actually do the development and then also operate the facility. As the staff knows, among the things that we're negotiating with the city is the development agreement and the terms of that development agreement, which of course would be binding on any subsequent operator as well.
Because Mr. Leary, now I have a comment, not a question, but the city will have a vested interest in the quality of that entity you transfer the property to.
As do we.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Mr. Camp, thank you for indulging me.
No, absolutely. I'm just about done here with my questions, which I don't know, some more may come up. One of the documents that we got in our packet, attachment 1 from Hunsaker and Associates, states that this project suits the neighborhood in style, size, and function as being one of their goals, I guess, for the project. And also that the project is properly scaled and creates an attractive street scene along Camino de los Mares. This is actually a question. We've looked at this project 3 times at the design review subcommittee. And each time I think we're pretty clear that it's out of scale. It's too big. And yet it kept coming back as the same size, same number of units, same density. Is there a reason for that? I mean, was that, where do we get 250 units? And why is that an absolute necessity?
Yeah. I think we stand by the statements in the submission that the project as laid out is consistent with the community plan and the architecture, et cetera. As far as the number of units goes, that kind of harkens to what I spoke to at the very beginning of the session tonight in terms of approaching this as a way to solve a number of competing interests within the city, including the need to maximize the number of units so that the city can meet its obligations under RENA. And so if you look at the progression, in the housing element that was submitted a year ago. I don't have that number exactly in front of me, but I think it was over 300 units, if I'm not mistaken. We came in at 250 because we wanted to stay consistent with the general feel of that community and of that area. And so at 250, it maximizes the number of units that the city is also seeking to maximize under the state law. And then it also enhances the number of the seniors that would be able to live there.
Okay, thank you. So you believe that it does meet these goals for San Clemente, which is the Spanish village by the sea, in terms of style, size, and function, and that it's properly scaled and creates an attractive street scene on Camino de los Mares. You believe that's true?
We do.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank
now.
you. Anyone else? Any other questions? Councilwoman Ward?
So some of my concerns, I heard a lot about this being affordable housing, and for our residents to live in and all that. The affordable portion that we're talking about is 13 units. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the balance is not affordable in category, and we don't know what they're going to charge for those units, do we?
No.
So none of the speakers that spoke today, there's no price point for any of these yet.
Correct.
Okay. I wanted to talk about that. Did any surrounding properties get notice of this study session today?
No, the study session does not require the surrounding property notification.
Okay. There's a lack of the surrounding property owners at this today. So I wondered that because I thought they would probably want to be here for this. The one thing that I don't understand is the order of approvals or the sequencing of this project. We've got something that is a medical center and 250 units. I really can't think when those are going off at all. 250 units in a medical center. They're all one lot. We're asking for all these, they're asking for all these exceptions, FAR, building height, and a parking to share the parking with the other one. I do understand shared parking with other areas, but then they're asking at the end for a lot split. So I'm confused because normally I would see this is the area for the housing. And this is the area for, this other lot. And I'm expecting everything to meet those specifications. And we're looking at the entire lot. Is that correct right now? And that's how this is laid out?
We are, and certainly we apologize if we've confused the matter. The tentative parcel map is part of the proposal, and we can certainly list that towards the top so that you see more of the bigger picture applications. Maybe it's the general plan amendment, zoning amendment, tentative parcel map, and then we go into the specific architectural, conditional, and site. Thank you.
I think that would make more sense. And let us be able to read it better because there's just so many exceptions to this. And the applicant certainly enlisted all the entitlements, which I appreciate in their letter. But it's a lot of different things that this city is agreeing to, that we're all up here sitting that we're going to agree to. I'm going to say some things that I need to see because I heard that before. I'm not saying what I think about anything. It's just what I think I need to see. I need to see how the increase in the FAR and the height contributes to this project being affordable. I'm not sure about that before I grant those exceptions that I want to give those exceptions. The condition of approval is, let's see, I wrote a lot of notes here. Okay, hold on one second. I also think that story polls, I'm going to want to see those too. There's no way that I can look at this piece of paper and a 51.6 ceiling, building height and know that that does not have any detrimental impacts to surrounding properties. I can't do that without that. And this is just, it's too big for me to be able to imagine that and just look at this. So I'm gonna just state that that should be something that we all need to see. And I think the residents around need to see. I just think we can't make any findings of knowing negative impacts if we don't have that for this project. It's just a new thing that we're going into. Let's see. I also want in the report, when it comes back into the Planning Commission, if possible, to have a list of all the required findings that we have to make in order to do these exceptions, each one. Because it's confusing when you see that the zone, the CC4 we're going to has a 45-foot height, a plate height of 37 and an FAR of 0.5 and a maximum 3-story. And then we're going to look at something else, the entitled or density bonus, and we're going to give them this other part, and we can't look at it and all that. That is all confusing of how we're doing that. I also am concerned that we don't have a traffic study yet. I am concerned about the right turn only. And then it sounded like I heard that the people are going to have to turn around at that light. And I'm wondering if is that the light at the intersection for Sea Point Estates? Is that where people would turn? Okay, so what traffic signal are we looking at where they have to turn around?
Yeah, the traffic signal, it shares the intersection with San Clemente Villas to the south. And then across from that entrance are office buildings.
But I thought I heard exiting was only going to be from the first driveway, and it'd be a right turn and right entrance only. And the next one at the light would be for the medical center. That's what I thought I heard.
Mr.
There's
Boisner,
only 2 though, but not 3.
Kate, will you pull up the applicant's presentation, please? So if you're looking at your packet, the sheet L1, it doesn't show it in its entirety, but there's 2 entrances. There's one at the left side,
Right.
and that's the right in, right out only. If you go to the right of the site plan is where the signalized intersection is.
Mhm.
And that's going to share the signalized entrance with San Clemente Villas. And then across from that is the office buildings.
Okay, so anyone making the right that came out that one side, and that's predominantly where the 4 stories is, I'm assuming more of the units, even though it is smaller, there's a lot of people are going to be there. They're going to be making right turns of that driveway and then turning around, doing a U-turn. We're going to allow a U-turn movement at that signal, along with the movement of turning left out of where the medical center is. So we need to see how that works. I think the traffic study should consider not just the traffic from there to the freeway back and forth at 250 units or 400 adults. I think seniors I heard, but also consider Forster Ranch and any of the developments past there that cross this. That should be in the traffic study. So if those can be answered, I think that would help me a lot. And I'm happy to hear it clarified. It's 13 affordable units, because we heard a lot about affordable. The last question I have, is there any limit? Is this a San Clemente precedence for San Clemente residents? Because I heard a lot about how this is going to help San Clemente residents. Is there a preference for that? Yeah, I think that's it. Just is it a local preference? Because I don't understand how, if we offer this to seniors, and I heard a lot about Orange County, they all move in, they're 55. These aren't going to be opening anytime soon.
So the affordable units, the residents that are offered the opportunity to move in, go through a point system through the application process, and extra points are provided for people that live or definitely live. I don't know if they get extra points for working. But they do, the way that the application process works is providing a connection to the community and giving those applicants preference.
So I think that's basically just a high level of what I need to see in order to figure this out, because the order that it's in, and asking for these exceptions, I don't understand how we're going to do it. And I'm very concerned that we make the findings that we're going to do this before any parcel map is ever entertained. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cosgrove. Then
Just
Mayor
thought I would,
Jones.
thank you, just stay in line with Councilmember Ward's ideas to clarify what would be helpful. First of all, on the parking study, to me, the parking exception is unclear without the study. The document from the architect talks about up to 400 residents. Then you've got the employees, visitors, healthcare providers. Then you have the urgent care medical office, their employees, and customers. And so I think it's very important that that traffic study would show us the assumptions around all the vehicle trip analysis coming in and out, along with that time of day, because obviously during the peak time, during the day, the medical center office is going to be having a lot of people coming in. And then what are those hours of operation? Are they 24 hours a day, or are they shut down? At what time? The shared parking is a concern in the event that there are no spare spots. Where do people go? There's no options really. There's the neighboring assisted living care, which that would be a disaster. You don't want people going across the street. That would be a disaster. There's no on-street parking. That just leaves the shopping center. So I think we have to get this one right, and we have to get the number right. And so it really is going to hinge on that study. It's going to hinge on all those assumptions and really understanding time of day, peak versus non-peak, all of that. Because when you're living here, I mean, that's, you're coming in and out. So I just, that really important. Okay. The other thing I'd like to understand on parking is the lot utilization. Are we, in terms of going out to the lot line? Because there is a slope towards the freeway. It's unclear when I look at the map how much utilization is there and how much is there a setback to the Caltrans right away. I don't know if there's any additional space there where we could have another row of parking. So it would be helpful to really understand lot utilization. And to Councilmember Ward's points around the parcel split, once that parcel split happens, that shared parking agreement is going to be nice on paper, but the reality is now we have two different parties that are going to have start finger pointing. So I think it's important to understand, as she said, the whole sequence of things and make sure that we have the right agreements at the right point, especially if the property is sold later. There's just going to be challenges with the parking and enforcing it and things like that. Okay. The other thing is with regards to the height, heard a lot of different statistics about the height. The applicant said average is 45 to a height of 48. I'm seeing other numbers up in the 50s, 50, 59. Some of the residents spoke tonight, thought it was 59 or 60. So there's a lot of confusion on the height. And I think that should be very, very clear to Commissioner Camp's point. There really is a lot of ambiguity in the FAR where that and the nexus to the bonus. I'm not understanding the nexus of jumping up an FAR from 0.5 to 2. That's a big increase. Why? So I understand there's some state law that provides the applicant with a bonus density. I think we need that unpacked, understand what are the mechanisms that they're triggering and to what degree do we need, does that, expand that FAR? Maybe, I'd like to understand if we have other options to push back, right? And as part of that, and I don't know where the development agreement falls as part of this or if it's separate, but the 5% very affordable is awesome. But that means basically 237 our market rate. And typically when we're in a process of doing bonus densities, we can look at additional, not just very affordable, we could look at affordable and very affordable. And so I wonder what leverage the city has to come back and say, okay, you want to do 5%, great. How about 5% very affordable? How about 5%? And on top of that, 5% affordable. I don't know if we can do those kinds of back and forth, or if it's just mandated by the mechanics of the state law and its statutes for the bonus density. So I think it would be helpful to have that all unpacked so we really understand how that works. The other thing would be it would be helpful to understand how this compares to the neighboring assisted living. When I look at that project, it appears to me that they are maintaining a level height, but they do have varying stories. And I think they achieve that through the slope of the site, and they slope it down to maintain a level of roof line while providing an extra story. And I don't know if that's being proposed here. The diagrams here don't really show grades. And if you look at the current site of the abandoned hospital, it appears to be below grade. If you're standing on the sidewalk, you're looking down, the door to enter is lower. It's not at street grade. And I don't know if this is going to be changed when the site's demolished and if it's all at grade, or are we going to see a similar below grade? And again, but could we look at maybe lowering the height of the building, giving them the 4 stories if there was a slope decrease on the back, and it would all be level. Now those bottom units would then be below grade. It would be a little, maybe not as desirable, but that's exactly how it is next door. Those below grade units have a little bit of a different, situation, a carve out for their window. And so that's a question. It would be nice to see. I'll echo the whole story pole thing. That would be huge. Another thing, and I don't know if this is too expensive but a model of this particular project would be helpful, because the actual renderings here, when I was sitting through design review, I found very challenging because it's all one-dimensional and it's very difficult to understand the massing. And I was able to follow the architect explain, we're pulling the massing back here. Oh, we're making a jog over there. But that's a lot of analysis and work to track that. If there was a model that the public could look at and see, oh, hey, the massing is not all this, right here. It does change. There are setbacks within the building, and we could see those roof lines. I don't know the expense. I don't know if that's appropriate, but I would just throw that out to the applicant. That would be a very helpful thing to have and see. The other thing with regards to the site study that you mentioned, traffic impact analysis, noise, I didn't write all those points down, but I don't know if soils is going to be part of that, but it should be, because there's a lot of caissons currently on that site, and there's a lot on the site next door, and that would be very important, I think, to the applicant to include soil study if they haven't already. So I didn't hear it, I didn't see it in the list, so I just wanted to call it out. So those would be the things that I think would be helpful. And then lastly would be, I see us flipping back in the municipal code, looking at the senior living municipal code standards, but then we're comparing those to CC4 municipal code standards. I was trying to compare those two. And then when I overlay any state law bonus density, trying to make that whole thing line up and align, confusing. And I'd like to understand where the city has discretionary authority in those different, in the municipal code interpretation. And that's where I was getting at unpacking that state density. This is mandated. This is in our discretion. That would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor James.
So I'm a neophyte here, and I defer to these planning commissioners, and I defer to Councilmember Ward, who was a longtime planning commissioner before she became a longtime city council member. The couple things I want to address, a couple things that were said earlier. You know, I have been working with Memorial Care now for nearly 3 years. And I would like to think that we have gotten to a point where they're a good partner with us, and I hope we're a good partner with them. Any discussions about a hospital ever going there simply is whistling past the graveyard. We live in, fortunately, I think we still live in a capitalist society. That changes every day, but nonetheless, I think we live in a capitalist society, and a hospital simply doesn't pencil out in San Clemente. And we need to stop looking in the rearview mirror, look forward, and what is the best use of that property. For those who can't do that, I suggest they read Adam Smith from the 18th century. You'll learn a lot. But a couple things. I do want to be recognized our taxpayers and citizens who live in Sea Summit, and recognize that, yes, you know, we need to protect their views. We need to protect their property values. I don't know, Jennifer, is there a short of putting up story poles, and I know that's going to be a 6-figure investment. Is there some sort of computer program, that looks at individual properties and how their views will be impacted?
Yes, and in fact, the section of our municipal code that mentions story polls talks about visual analysis by other means, such as models, such as simulations, computer systems. And the applicant has used the alternative means to provide specific visual impacts to the surrounding residential neighborhoods. I should correct myself, the uphill residential neighborhoods. The applicant has provided copies of those simulations. They're available here if I could pass them out to the commission and council.
Please. And let me correct the neighborhood. It's Sea Point Estates, not Sea Summit. Sorry about that. While you're doing that, I do think we need to get those neighbors to a level of comfort, and I would like to know how much, if we can't get there for ourselves, I don't know, what is the cost, Ms. Savage, of story poles for this project?
The applicant has estimated that for this particular project, it is 6 figures.
Well, is that 6 figures that starts with a 1, or 6 figures that starts with a 9?
A 1.
A 1, okay.
And something to consider with the story poles is it's because of the footprint of the building. And I have other copies, and I'll continue to pass them out to the commission and council. The mechanism to be able to provide story poles for the whole footprint, it means that it's more complex than just a single story poles for a single family dwelling. So the visual impact of the temporary story poles would be quite considerable.
Very good. And I need, again, as a neophyte here, looking at all this, I need to understand the parking study as well. And I need to understand if there is enough parking. And so you have the villas of San Clemente right next door. Will they be vying for each other's parking spots? And how is that going to work out? So I do have some concern with that. And the last thing we want is people having to park across the street and walk across Camino de las Maras, because sooner or later that's going to have a catastrophic result. So the most upsetting thing I've seen tonight, though, is the lady who the lady they said was 68 years old, and that was their average senior citizen moving in there. Because I'm saying, like, maybe I should reserve a place now. I might be too late. I'm going to echo Mr. Cosgrove's notion of it would be great to have a model. That would be a wonderful thing to see. And then my last question, and I'll shut up and I'll go back to the Adam Smith book, The Wealth of Nations. My last question is, do we know what the heights of the villas of San Clemente, what that is?
Yeah, that was provided by the applicant this evening on their presentation, and
I missed it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it was, and sorry, it was tiny on your screen. I think is it 50 feet? Sorry, the San Clemente villas to the south on your exhibit on the presentation. Do you recall if that was indicative of 50 feet? There is some variation, and the applicant's explaining it's between 45 and 50.
I think they need to have an understanding of what is next door. Mr. Chair, I'm done.
Can I piggyback since you piggybacked on?
Absolutely.
Has any of the neighbors up in Sea Point, have they invited you to look from or try to get some view angles from their properties? And have you attempted to do that? Because that's my experience. That's been a good way to approximate those kind of view corridors.
Yeah, no, we have not been personally invited to their backyards, but what we did was we took Google Earth, which is a pretty respectable platform that has these aerials, and they have topo on there that's fairly accurate to what's out there. I mean, they use very accurate points, and so we took one from each one of those backyards. And if you look through the package, you'll notice that most of the higher elevation homes, the impact on their views are minimal, if any. It's where you get down to the lower homes on that street where there's impact, and I believe there's impact to about 2 of them that may impact the blue water views. But for the most part, the houses that are higher up on the hill, some of them don't even view out over our project. In fact, some of the lower homes are looking out towards the south, and some of them are looking out towards the north. So,
okay. It seems like there was a couple of residents at our DRSC meeting that indicated they had approached, it might not have been you, but they had approached the developer and invited them, and they were turned down. So I think that might be a good.
yeah, I'm only responding for myself.
Yeah, no,
I was not
understand.
invited. I'd love to be invited.
I'm not accusing you of lying, certainly. But that I think would be a good approach and just because they're on the lower end of maybe the low rent district, I guess, of Sea Point, doesn't mean it's not important.
If I may respond to your comment, we would be happy with any property owner on the hill that would like us to do a customized view simulation. We'd be happy to do that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we didn't do it because we didn't want to invade their privacy. We didn't want to, we took publicly available sources to generate what's been distributed to you. We have shared those with some property owners that have inquired, because we had a meeting with the homeowners association there, and we had copies of some of those simulations available. But bottom line is, we will be more than happy to provide them with a specific simulation from their property, and we can put them in contact with the right people to get that done.
Okay, they should go through Jennifer. I assume, or
I can definitely put, staff can put anyone who's interested in touch with the applicant team.
that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner McCacken.
Split that's being asked for, is that to split off the health center from the residential buildings?
Correct. It would provide a separate parcel for the medical office.
And then A-1-2, this perspective, is building one, it's another question on elevations. Building one sit higher than building two? Because it's hard in this, are they showing what their original was, or is that the actual building one that's above this east side view, which would be from like the villas next door? Because
Yes,
it's a
building,
lot higher than the other building.
correct. Building one does step up to the
Higher.
fourth story. Yeah, building two steps down similar to the adjacent parcel.
Okay. And our city does not require the recreation area as another floor, even though people are up there.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, you've asked for a recreation area up on top of story 4.
Mhm.
So that's not considered a 5th story. That's considered a
A roof deck.
roof deck.
Yeah.
Are there any buildings up there
No,
besides the mechanical?
there are not. Other than the stair tower that comes up to provide exiting and the elevator tower.
And my last question is to Jennifer, is there any other properties in our city that is currently zoned, what I would call H1, but we call RMF1, Regional Medical Center Facility? Any other property?
No,
Any other property that's been identified as a possible site?
for a hospital or that zoning?
Yeah,
Yes.
and do we know where those are?
There have been discussions in the past regarding potential locations for hospitals elsewhere in the site, or sorry, elsewhere in the city.
Okay. Because I just feel we should never shut the door on any possible opportunity, being an exposition. Because I come from a city where the city did cooperate with a foundation, and we did form a hospital that still exists and is successful. So, and I'm not, I don't know what the committee had discussed, but I don't think we should burn necessarily our bridge.
Thank you. Yeah, and if staff could just clarify, around the zoning, there is a settlement agreement that went through the court. It's part of litigation, and it requires the city to rezone the property. So something for consideration is that your base starting point should really be the CC4 zoning. We are required by law, by courts, to rezone that property.
I'm not thinking about I understand that,
Okay.
but I'm saying just that the city is enough forward looking to not shut a door that might be open to somebody who might be interested at some future time.
Yes,
In
and
other words, if we do not have a zone that's zoned H1 or RMF1, and we have it, we have it as commercial, then it will never be looked at by any possibility for a hospital. It'll always be looked for as a commercial sector.
yeah, so we do have to rezone it to away from the RMF. However, the RMF Regional Medical Facility zoning designation still remains in our general plan and our zoning code, which means that if there is a property elsewhere in the city that someone would want to develop a hospital on, there's that mechanism that would allow them to rezone a different property for regional medical facilities.
In the current category, we don't have a piece of property that's designated that, except this piece of property.
Commissioner McCacken, Mayor James wants to weigh in on this.
So Councilmember Duncan and I have spent the last 2 years doing this, and we have identified properties that would be acceptable. And however, no entity, be it public, a healthcare district or private operator, showed an interest in building a hospital in San Clemente, short of the city of San Clemente funding the entire thing and then guaranteeing the operation of that hospital, that entity wouldn't lose money. We spent 2 years doing that. We turned over every rock. We looked behind every door and simply couldn't find someone to operate a hospital. With that being said, any group of citizens could form a political action committee, create a group, and get on the ballot the formation of a healthcare district. They could go to our neighboring cities and do that. I don't think Chris and I reached out to neighboring cities. If you spoke with Dana Point, they would say, no, we've got a hospital, in South Laguna Beach. If you speak with San Juan Capistrano, they'd say, no, we have a hospital in Mission Viejo. So no neighboring city really had an interest in joining us in even looking at the possibility of the creation of a healthcare district. And I don't think I'd be in favor of that. But we did ask those questions, and we do have a piece of property that could very well be used for a hospital.
Because I come from a city that there was a foundation established in the 50s that then had negotiations with the city. Within the city identified a piece of property. The city floated bonds and, not gave it, but rent it to the foundation on 100 or a 50-year lease with an additional 50 if the council approved for $1 a year. And that hospital is still existing, although our current operator did buy out the lease and now they own the property.
I don't want to get in the weeds.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I don't think we are eliminating a property that is designated for a hospital.
I get it.
And, we should be looking if we are worthy of our nickels and dimes at what other property could be. Because I think there are ideas out there that it could. It doesn't have to be a hospital district. Downey was not a hospital district, but the city did have to guarantee payment of the bonds on default, and it never occurred.
Chair, if I may.
Yeah,
On that
go.
line, and
Councilwoman Ferguson.
piggybacking on what Mayor James had indicated. So a couple of years ago, even before the latest council that we've had 3 councils, 3 councils in my time here. But we did actually zone the entire city, allow zoning in the entire city for 1 year before the council formally voted to remove that, but kind of umbrella zoning, allowing anyone during that time, and the city attorney could better indicate probably exactly when that was, but no one came forward. So we actually allowed any opportunity, and we formally took a vote on that. And was it a resolution that we did, city attorney, or?
Yes, well, you did because you initiated the general plan amendment that you're
General plan.
talking about.
Okay,
tonight.
yeah, so it kind of umbrella, so zoning, you could go anywhere, and we gave that a full year and no one came forward in that. So I just wanted to add that to what Mayor James was saying, because subsequently the committee also looked at that as well. So there has been no leaf unturned, so to speak, in this effort. Thank you.
The one thing I learned in this, I guess we do have to talk about the fact of, is a hospital viable in San Clemente? The problem is the payers, the big payers, Medicare, TRICARE, insurance companies are running people out of the hospital, out of inpatient care. Inpatient care is not what it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, or even in the 90s, or even in the early 2000s. People get major surgery and they're home that night. So having a hospital, for any entity looking at a hospital, is looking at the fact that inpatient care is going to be a loser for them. And that's what is driving the fact that we don't have any interest from any entity in running a hospital in San Clemente.
Thank you. Commissioner McCacken, did you have any other questions? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Crandall?
Yeah, just real quick, this would be a question for city attorney. One, the zone change is a done deal, correct?
Yeah.
Even though it's on the agenda to go through planning commission. It's a done deal.
No, it's not a done deal. This, as was explained earlier, under the settlement agreement with the court, the city has to rezone. There are three choices. One is to rezone the property pursuant to this application. The second one is to leave the zoning as it is, but the city has to carry the costs of maintaining and securing the property for that duration. Or as Jennifer indicated, letting it revert to the prior zoning, which I don't think anybody wants. The city has moved off that and the applicant's not interested in it because it can't pursue these goals.
Okay, well, one thing that's different than the city council's responsibility on this. The planning commission looks at this project anonymously. Doesn't matter who the applicant is at all. Whether it's, and we find out they're going to sell off the residential portion of it, which I totally understand. So we've got a zone now of a CC4 where we start. And do we know how many units they could have if they complied with CC4 requirements?
Yes. So they would be able to have 297 units.
And that's without exceptions.
Right. And just to clarify, the CC4 allows residential if it's a senior housing project. And so for any senior housing project in the CC4, they're allowed 45 dwelling units per acre.
Okay.
And with
Okay.
the lot size, it'd
Those
be,
numbers are great, but did they do a study of how many units they could get with the required parking without taking any exceptions in height or parking, et cetera? Okay. Can they get on that lot and comply with everything? Because as a planning commissioner, I have to, it's a discretionary decision to give exceptions. And at design review, I said, if we're going to give exceptions, you've got to justify it and make it very clear why you have to have that. And I didn't get a direct response for that.
Could we address one thing about the FAR for the?
Well,
Sure.
I'm not worried about the FAR. How many units could you develop?
We haven't
meeting all
done a study
requirements?
to that effect. But if you want the compatibility of the FAR versus the 45 dwelling units per acre, we have looked at that. You can get about 22 dwelling units per acre with the 0.5 FAR.
Can you develop that with your program?
I can't answer that question.
we can work on providing that information in the future.
Because I'm trying to justify if they can meet all the requirements, this is a slam dunk. But they're asking for so many exceptions. Is it just to maximize density, to make more money? And make it, and that's not a something we can base our decisions on. That's not a, we base it on land use and compatibility with the ordinances. And whether it's financially feasible or not, that's not in our equation.
No, if I could, Mayor and Chair, that they might make more money is not part of the commission's purview.
That's right.
Or the council's, that these exceptions are necessary to provide the affordable housing that they're committing to is important. And I don't think you've had that dialogue. And I don't think this is the place with the applicant to have them assert forcefully and emphatically that this footprint and this height and this many stories are necessary for them to make the affordability commitments. Once they do that, then you're right. The discretion that we normally use is curtailed and preempted by a state legislature that concluded that at any price or with any impact, CEQA doesn't apply and the normal limitations that you're discussing haven't applied. So I appreciate the dialogue tonight about and the discussion that you've prompted about what the planning commission might normally do and what it might do under this preemptive umbrella. And that's difficult. And we've talked about that with staff. By the time it gets to the city council, the council's burdened with the whole package, the preemptive cram down and what looks or feels nice traditionally in town. And we're going to get to that. But there's a dialogue and a dance, to speak bluntly, that needs to happen with the applicant owner.
And for us to make our decisions at the planning commission, we need
To know how much leeway you have. Yes.
And when they say there's a story exemption or exception that they want to take, how much of the building is considered a story? Just the affordable housing? Could they have 13 units on the fourth floor? And
This,
that's a story exemption to get their affordable housing rather than 40 or 50 units exception. Is that a discretionary call?
no, state law preempts.
But can they go to 6-story, 7-story, 8-story? If asked,
Conceivably, yes.
Mr. Chairman, when you get a
um,
chance, I have a question.
but it's only
Okay.
to benefit getting those 5% affordable units. Correct?
State law, it was modified and now stands to a point where if the applicant provides a certain level of affordability, in this case, 5% at very low, they are, if they request so, they are provided a mechanism to exceed the height in this case. And we don't have the ability,
Couldn't say just 50% of the building could be 4-story.
no.
I don't think it's that precise. I don't think it's actually. Have to read it again. Okay,
Commissioner Crandall,
yes.
we'd like to cut off your time for the
That's fine.
moment and take a few-minute break. I'm looking at the clock there. It's 7:12. Why don't we reconvene at 7:20
Thank you.
and we'll come back to you.
Amazing. So if you.
I'm gonna reconvene the meeting. Jennifer, is the recording in progress?
Yes.
I'm hearing the
You're-
meeting is live again.
Yes.
So thank you for the recess, everyone. Commissioner Crandall, did you have any more questions? Okay. Commissioner Leffler, Prescott Leffler, do you have any questions?
Jennifer, I have a question for you. So I'm trying to wrap my head around this density bonus law. And I'm reading a couple of definitions here. And it says, it does apply to senior housing and it permits a developer to increase the maximum allowable on a site in exchange for support for the specified public policy. And then, you want me to yell? And then it talks about areas that are specific, such as parking, zoning. I don't see height in here, but I'm curious if I'm, reading the whole bill. Also, it talks about that the affordable units can be sold to a nonprofit. They don't have to be sold to the public. And then the nonprofit is the broker, which really doesn't concern the planning commission, but that was just something that was in it. And then it also says that it addresses the footprint. So that's basically what the planning commission does, is look at this. So I want to know what this law says we can look at and ask for a change if we needed to, and what the state says we can't even touch, because maybe we're wasting a lot of time here looking at all of this. Again, it also says that the law was just recently changed at the beginning of this year. So I want to know what the change is. And then my second question is the VMT. I see that the vehicle miles traveled, there was an analysis, or is there going to be an analysis? And why would that play into this project? And then, I'm sorry, my questions are out of order. What is the benefit to our applicant for using the density bonus law? What's their benefit? What's the benefit to the city if there's any?
So I'll take your second question first. The vehicle miles traveled, there will be an analysis for that. And when CEQA law changed to no longer require the traffic impact analysis, it added the requirement for vehicle miles traveled. So that is required and will be part of the CEQA review.
Now, when we're talking about vehicle miles traveled, is that the resident traveling through San Clemente into another county, or how specific is that?
It is all trips. So they the vehicle miles traveled calculates the start point and the end point, the end point for trips, both within the city boundaries and out. And there's a formula that attributes the actual number of miles per trip to then get a total number of vehicle miles traveled for the project.
All right, thank you.
Your first question is in regards to the density bonus. And there were two parts to your questions 1 and question 3. So the first one was, what are your lanes per se, or what fences does the state law draw? In terms of what they can ask for, yes, height is part of that, floor area is part of that. There is a section within the state density bonus law that talks about development standards and what development standards are. They provide examples that include but not limit, and then provide some examples. I'm not sure what you were reading from, but just a note for everybody, our current density bonus ordinance within our code is out of date and it doesn't match state law. We are working on that, but we will be relying on the current state law for this project and any other project that comes in and requests the use of the density bonus law. Speaking of which, it changed this year specifically to allow additional density bonus. So I believe there's one particular type of project that can get, I believe, 100% density bonus. that's hard to qualify for, but the largest change, the most significant change is some of the lower percentage of provisions of affordable housing. You can get up to 50%, whereas before, I believe the max was 35%. So it's just adding that extra layer of additional units someone could ask for.
So when there was a question here this evening from the design review saying, we kept addressing the height and it kept coming back the same without any change. Does that have something to do with the density bonus law?
There's two parts to an answer for that. When you speak of density as it relates to density bonus law, the project before you is not requesting the use of the actual bonus units. So the project, if you take the site as a whole, the site that's over 6 acres, with the 45 dwelling units per acre, they can develop the 297 units. When you add in the 5% very low units, you get a density bonus on top of that. So the base zone would allow 297 units, and I'm not going to guess, there's a percentage that they would get above and beyond that. So even more than the applicant's not requesting that. So they're actually requesting less than they could provide on the site.
Does it have anything then? I feel like I'm asking a board game here. Is it bigger than a bread box? What I'm trying to get to is the density bonus law. Can they go up as high as they want to because of that law?
So this, I apologize if this is complicated. So they could ask for, say, a height exception. The height exception is not limited. It doesn't say up to 3 stories. Though there is a provision. There is a provision that does talk about some limitations, and we'll provide that to you for it to be clear. But if you ask for a height limitation and perhaps they're asking for 3 stories or an additional 3 stories, you have other development standards that will limit the actual request to that, such as the number of units, such as the setbacks, that sort of thing. So you will have some limitations that bring the ultimate request down.
I just feel like that we don't have enough information. I think it was mentioned before. And I think this density bonus law applies to many different areas as far as the footprint, that I need more information. I personally need more information. I don't know about the rest of the commission, but I would like to see in detail if we could dissect that law so I understand how it actually applies. And again, I want to know what the benefits are for the applicant, and I want to know what the benefits are for the city, aside from meeting arena members. Because I can see that that would be a benefit, but I want the pros and cons.
Thank you.
And I have no further questions.
Thank you. Councilman LeBlanc?
Yeah, I just have a question for Jennifer. Comments were made earlier about the environmental impact report, and you mentioned that it wasn't site specific. My question is, were any of the other properties, parcels of property that were designated for housing, additional housing to meet the arena needs, were any of those properties specifically studied?
No, so the way that it's set up is that it looks at the program as a whole. And as the city starts to go through what we call our rezoning program and consider those specific sites, we'll look at details and more.
Thank you. Most of my questions, all of my questions were answered, but I did want to comment on, there's been a little bit of a discussion about story polls and models. I think the view field simulation is actually pretty accurate. I'm very familiar with this kind of analysis. It looks great when you look at the Campanella Street, which is the lowest street above this project that would have the greatest potential for impact. When you look at the simulation, no one's view is obliterated. A few of the homes have an impact, but no one's view is eliminated. And when you look at it, the existing sycamore trees actually are doing more damage to the blue water view than the structure will. So in terms of my decision-making process, I don't know that I need to see view pools or models. I think this view simulation actually pretty accurate. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman.
Chair, can I ask a follow-up?
Please.
So Jennifer, with CC4, you made a comment earlier that CC4, the zoning is greater. And I'm not sure greater than what? You said CC4 is higher, that designation for zoning.
I think I may have been referring to the senior housing project development standards, providing more flexibility than the base zone of CC4.
Oh, okay. So I looked up for the municipal code, the findings that you have to make. In this code, in this part to do a CUP, it said the height limit for the CUP for senior housing to say that this can be senior housing is a 45-foot roof height, a plate height of 37 and a maximum 3-story and a 0.5 FAR. And it also said that in our code that you can grant these exceptions given that the certain findings are made and the required findings that no portion of the building shall exceed 45 feet. That's for this use for senior housing. So where does it come in after that where they are allowed to ask for density? Density bonus would be one. If you give us, if we're going to do 13 units, we want this 5%, we want this density bonus. That I get, but I'm not understanding what are we starting at? Are we not for that CC4? Because we all pretty much said, okay, CC4, they probably, in our agreement, it can go back to the existing, which to me, it's an agreement we've made, but not fully of how we're going to do the zoning, and they're approaching us to do this now. But what is the base? Because every mixed use that I looked at, the zoning for mixed use, I think all of mixed use 1 through 5 was 36 feet height, roof height, or 24, I think was MU5. I'm not sure why, but that one was less. Where is this beginning and starting?
Thank you for the question, especially since just looking at the reference, I did misspeak earlier. So the base zoning CC4, the height limitation is 45 feet to the top of roof, 37 feet to the plate, and 3 stories. So correcting what I said before, the senior housing project development standards would equate to that.
Okay, that's where I'm having a problem because you said CC4 and it's different than that, but it's really, this is the standards for senior housing is the 45-foot roof height. So they're asking for an exception, but they're using our municipal code exception and a what's it called? A density bonus exception. And what's the other exception they're using? Is that just the parking or is there one more? It seems like they're asking for 3 separate things. And I'm not sure if the city has to grant 3 separate things. We can just stop at one thing. Can we not? Do we have that discretion to say, we'll grant you 1 exception to the CUP?
That's something that we will clarify with the project moving forward, what exceptions they're asking, through what mechanisms, and how many we have or don't have in terms of granting.
Okay. The last thing, and I had forgotten it, is there's usually is when there's a senior housing project or something that might impact public safety, excessive, an impact to medical response or something like that. We have a condition in the approval that they accept that if it is deemed to be excessive, that they agree that they will pay for that. I'm not sure what it, do you remember that condition for public safety? If it increases public safety, too many calls to that location, we are able to implement something. And I just think that that should be
We could look at that.
a
Yes, I
condition
do
of
remember. I do
approval.
remember the threshold.
Yeah, that was the last thing I remembered. I forgot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions?
I got one. I got a couple. All right, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. So, okay, so just so I'm clear, this project is, the application is based on 1 parcel currently, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's 6 point something acres.
Correct.
And you could allow 25 units per acre,
45 units per acre.
45 units per acre?
Correct.
Oh. I thought it was 25, you said.
45.
Okay. So this land is going to be subdivided, right?
As part of this proposal, yes.
So if the land is subdivided, and I imagine on one parcel is the medical center, correct?
Correct.
The other parcel is the senior living,
Correct.
correct? So if you subdivide it before you do all the math, does that open up tighter restrictions on that? Because I don't know if it's 4 acres for the senior and 2 acres for the medical. How's that layout?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you estimate numbers. The total site is 6.6 acres. The residential, as they're proposing, is 6.1 acres. And so the medical site is around 0.5. It may
Okay.
be just under
Okay.
0.46.
Okay. And then I understand that. And so that kind of gets that done. So why is this not being parceled out and then applied individually? Why is it being the application as one and then we're splitting it? Why is it? Because almost like the medical center should qualify for its parking on its own. The senior living should qualify for its parking on its own. Why is it combined and then split?
That's a good question. So the order of the applications, an applicant could come in and ask for a general plan amendment and zoning amendment. Then they could come back and ask for a tentative parcel map. Then they could come back and ask for a site plan and a conditional use permit. However, they don't have to. Our code provides a provision that allows concurrent processing for applications. And that's why you have before you, and I apologize if it was a bit confusing on the ordering, but you do have before you in the future for consideration, those several applications, and they all provide one cohesive total project that the applicant can request to process concurrently.
I understand. Now, do they have to be approved concurrently? Is
Yeah.
it one package?
To a degree, because some applications rely on others. And I don't know if Cecilia would know, but there may be a provision in the code that speaks to if the applicant requests, the city will process it concurrently.
So that means I'd just like to get clarity. Do we have to approve both of them?
We will provide that clarity to you.
And then another thing, so there could be 400 units, right? Or 400 people living here, correct? And do you know, does the I guess parking study assume that there's one vehicle per person? Do you know?
There is a formula, just to be clear, it doesn't, the application itself does not assume a population. I believe that was an estimate that somebody provided, but the parking study does provide a formula with assumptions.
So if everybody in my mind has one car that's 400 and there's only 302 spaces they're allowing, then the math is wrong. So I'd like to understand kind of how they come to those assumptions and those clarities and that kind of thing. And then it talks about you got, was it 249 spots, right? But how many beds do we have? So there's some 2 bedrooms and then there's some 1 bedrooms and there's some studios. So a 2-bedroom unit, does that factor into parking differently than a studio?
It does not. Our development standards for senior housing require only 1 covered parking space per unit.
So now, this isn't just covered parking space. This is parking space at all, right? Am I correct? Because I don't care covered or not. I'm just looking for a husband and wife in a 2-bedroom with their mom who's over 55. Okay. That's 3 cars. I don't care if one of them has it covered and 2 don't. I mean, this is an accumulative parking, covered and non-parking or non-covered. Is that correct?
So you're correct that Many uses within the code, or I should say most residential uses in the code look at covered and not covered, except that for senior housing projects, it specifically says just one covered parking space.
So would parking be a limiting factor of how many units could be built in a certain building?
Depending on the use and the proposal, yes.
Well, this proposal.
No. So for this proposal, you are just looking at the parking as required by code.
But that parking by code mechanism can limit how high or how many units. Is that right?
Correct, because if
Okay.
they couldn't provide 249 parking spaces.
That's right. So the exception has to be if we do a height exception, then we must pretty much do a parking exception based on the units.
If you're doing a height exception based on the density bonus ordinance, the density bonus law allows for reductions in parking. So the answer to your question is yes, if they're not requiring the density bonus or not using the density bonus, but no, if they are.
So if they're going higher and proposing more units and people living there, we must have an exemption for their parking requirements. Okay. I think I understand. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a few questions. Regarding the height, are we talking about height to like a ridge line, or are we talking about an average height per roof plane?
We're talking about average height based on the location of the project.
So average height for each individual roof plane? Where
Yeah.
like we'll pick up the four corners and then average them?
Correct. And the applicant is working to provide a clear exhibit to identify where that average height is taken and then what the ultimate average height is.
Okay. My opinion, the ultimate average height doesn't matter. It's the average height per plane that, if there's a low average height of the portico share, that's not what anybody's gonna get up in arms about.
Correct. Yes. Correct.
Okay. Because it looks like in some of the exhibits that they're going to the ridge line, which is not the same way that height is normally calculated in this town.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm not sure, but there might be some confusion there. And it might benefit everybody if that was better explained. At the very, very beginning, there was talk of a front setback and how it was generous. Do you know what the front setback is and what it's required to be? Or does the applicant?
So I believe it's required to be 10 feet. We have about 14 and a half, and it varies from 12 and a half to 14 and a half long.
Okay, thank you. I think that we'd all be benefited. I know I would personally, if there was a good exhibit relative to this height issue, really honing in on the height as calculated with each individual roof plane, and then an exhibit where on the site those overage heights are. Are they in the front? Are they in the back? Are they near the side? Whatever. And also what percentage of the building, let's say, is over max height. I know I would benefit from that. I would suggest, I want to follow on with what Councilman Noblock said, which is this view exhibit to me looks awesome and amazing relative to they go in and look at a number of their calculated estimated view impacts on a lot by lot basis for the lower lots in Sea Point Estates. And so I think that I'm not sure But I think that the view impacts might be much less than is feared to those residents. And to the extent that the applicant could make those view studies more available, maybe even have direct outreach to each of those sites that they studied. I'd suggest that maybe they have direct outreach to each one where they are estimating to block some blue water view. But I agree that, based on this, assuming it's right, which I have no reason to believe it's not, the vast majority of views seems to be maintained, if we're talking about view of the ocean, which I think most people are. So those are my comments and questions. Has anybody, Commissioner Crandall?
Just one question. We don't protect. But that's not to say that the base zoning would affect the view. But in determining an exception, that's certainly something to take into consideration. Would you be correct?
That's right.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments or questions, Commissioner Davies?
So one question, so say we do approve this thing and there ends up being two separate parcels, but in the future, you can't sell one of them, like the medical center, for instance. You can't sell that because there's no parking. And how does that agreement to share parking move forward with two different landowners?
It runs with the land.
What's that?
It runs with the land. They're all be subject to it.
So everybody's subject to it.
Every
They're on
future
after.
is subject
Got it.
to it.
They'll obligate each parcel to that.
Got it. Okay.
It's untitled.
It's on title. I understand. So I'm just looking at people really battling over this thing, but that's not everybody knows going in. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will sure.
So I'll make a motion for city council members. Next regular city council meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 6th, 2022. At the San Clemente Community Center Auditorium, 100 Calais Seville, San Clemente, California. Closed sessions items will be considered at 6 p.m. and the regular business meeting will commence at 5 p.m.
We need a second on that?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
I will make a motion that we adjourn this meeting to the next regular planning commission meeting to be held on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in this location, San Clemente Community Center Auditorium, 100 Calle Seville, San Clemente, California.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Cosgrove. All in favor?
Aye.
Sounds unanimous. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone.